The storm door slammed open, just as Althea Boone reached for the latch, and a man she had never seen stumbled into her shelter, with rain pouring off his hat and a revolver in his hand. She pressed her back against the wooden wall, heart hammering, one hand gripping the lantern handle hard enough to make the flames shudder. The stranger kicked the door shut against the wind, turned, and froze when he saw her. His eyes were dark, tired, and sharp all at once. His jacket was soaked through. Mud streaked his boots. He did not lower the gun. "You need to leave," Althea said, forcing her voice steady. "This is private property." The man glanced at the door, then back at her. His jaw worked. "I am not here to harm you, ma'am. I am here because 3 riders just tried to put a bullet in my spine, and your shelter was the only cover for 2 miles. Thunder cracked overhead, so loud the jars on the shelf rattled. Althea swallowed. She had seen no riders. She had been checking the preserves when the sky opened up. But the look in his eyes was not a liar's look. It was the look of a man who had been running hard and expected to keep running. "Who are you?" she asked. "Jesse Cooper. Railroad guard, out of Cheyenne. And you are Althea Boone, if the name on the ranch gate is right." Her stomach dropped. He knew her name. That meant he had been watching, or asking questions, or both. She straightened her shoulders and met his gaze. "What do you want with me?" He holstered the revolver slowly, hands lifted just enough to show he meant no threat. "I want to wait out the storm, ma'am. After that, I will be gone. Unless you would rather I step back into the rain and let those riders finish what they started." Althea said nothing. Her mind was racing. She had spent 2 years keeping her head down, keeping her ranch running, keeping her secret buried. The last thing she needed was a railroad guard with enemies camping in her storm shelter. But turning him out into a storm with armed men hunting him felt like murder, and she was not that far gone yet. "Fine," she said. "You can stay until the rain stops. But you do not touch anything, you do not ask questions, and you leave the moment the sky clears." Jesse nodded once, water dripping from the brim of his hat onto the dirt floor. "Fair enough." He moved to the far side of the shelter, slow and careful, and leaned against the wall opposite her. The space was small, 10 feet across, maybe less. She could hear him breathing. The lantern light caught the stubble on his jaw, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand never drifted far from his gun. Althea set the lantern on the shelf and crossed her arms. She did not sit. She did not relax. She watched him the way she would watch a rattlesnake coiled in the barn, waiting to see which way it would strike. The storm howled outside. Rain hammered the roof in waves. Minutes crawled past. Jesse did not speak. He did not move. He just stood there, eyes half closed, catching his breath like a man who had been running for days. Finally, Althea broke the silence. "Why are they after you?" Jesse opened his eyes. "Long story. I have time." He studied her for a moment, then let out a slow breath. "I was guarding a payroll shipment 2 weeks back. We got hit outside Laramie. 5 men, masks, rifles. They took the strongbox and shot the engineer. I chased them. Caught one. He talked before he died. Told me the man who hired them was a landowner here in Sunset Fork. Name of Harlan Voss." Althea felt the blood drain from her face. Harlan Voss. The man who owned half the county. The man who had been circling her ranch like a buzzard ever since her husband died. The man who had made it clear he wanted her land and did not care how he got it. Jesse must have seen something in her expression, because he straightened. "You know him." "Everyone knows him," Althea said quietly. "He owns the bank, the rail spur, the freight office, and he has been trying to buy my ranch for 2 years. Jesse's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because my land sits between his holdings and the new rail line. If he takes it, he controls the whole valley, and you will not sell." Althea lifted her chin. "No." Jesse was quiet for a beat. Then he said, "That is why those riders are here. Voss must have heard I survived. He sent them to make sure I do not testify." Althea's pulse kicked up. If Jesse Cooper was a witness against Harlan Voss, then he was a dead man, walking. And if Voss found out Jesse had taken shelter on her land, she would be next. "You need to leave," she said again, sharper this time. "Tonight." As soon as the storm breaks, Jesse pushed off the wall and took a step toward her. "I will leave, ma'am. But not before I tell you something. If Voss is willing to kill a railroad guard to keep his name clean, he will not stop at foreclosure to take your ranch. He will burn you out, run off your stock, or worse. You need protection." Althea laughed. A bitter sound. "From who?" "The sheriff works for Voss. The judge takes his money. There is no law in Sunset Fork that does not answer to him." Jesse held her gaze. "Then you need someone who does not answer to him." The lantern flickered. The wind screamed. Althea realized she was standing close enough to see the scar along his jaw, the weariness in his eyes, the way his hands were steady even though his breathing was still rough. "Why would you help me?" she asked. "Because I need a place to stay while I gather evidence. And because you are the only person in this valley who has as much reason to hate Voss as I do." Althea shook her head. "That is not enough." Jesse's mouth tightened. "Then how about this? If Voss takes your ranch, he wins. If he kills me, he wins. But if we both survive, we can take him down together. That is worth something." It was a gamble. A terrible, reckless gamble. But Althea had been gambling ever since she forged her husband's signature on the land claim 2 years ago, the night before he died. She had gambled that no one would notice, that the county clerk would file the papers without questions, that she could keep the ranch running long enough to prove she deserved it. So far, she had won. But the weight of that secret sat heavy in her chest every single day, and now a stranger with a gun and a vendetta was offering her a way out, or a way into something worse. "All right," she said slowly. "You can stay. 1 week. You keep out of sight, you do not bring trouble to my door, and you do not ask about my business." Jesse nodded. "Deal." Althea turned away, reaching for the lantern. "And if Voss finds out you are here, you leave. No argument. No heroics. You just go." "Understood." She did not believe him. But she did not have a choice. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving the prairie soaked and steaming under a pale sky. Althea found Jesse in the barn, mucking out the stalls without being asked. He had rolled up his sleeves. His hat hung on a nail. He worked with the steady rhythm of a man who had done hard labor before. She set the bucket of oats down harder than necessary. "I did not ask you to do that." Jesse glanced up. "You did not ask me to sit idle, either." Althea crossed her arms. If anyone sees you here, they will talk. And if they talk, Voss will know. Then I will stay out of sight. He went back to work. Althea watched him for a moment, irritation prickling under her skin. She was not used to men who did not need instruction. Her late husband had been capable, but distant. The ranch hands she hired in spring were reliable, but they followed orders. Jesse Cooper moved like someone who had learned to read a situation and act without waiting for permission. It unsettled her. "What do you know about ranching?" she asked. "Enough to muck a stall and mend a fence. I grew up on a cattle spread in Missouri. Left when I was 16. Been working rails and freight ever since." "Why did you leave?" Jesse paused, leaning on the pitchfork. "Same reason most men leave. Nothing left to stay for." Althea did not press. She understood that kind of answer. She had her own version of it. She turned toward the barn door. "I am riding into town this morning. There is bread and coffee in the house. Do not touch anything else." Jesse straightened. "You should not go alone." Althea looked back at him. "I have been going alone for 2 years. That was before Voss had a reason to move on you." Her jaw tightened. "He does not know you are here. Not yet. But he will be watching. Men like Voss always watch." Althea wanted to argue, but the truth was, she had felt it too. The way the bank clerk's eyes followed her when she cashed the grain check. The way the freight office manager asked too many questions about her stock numbers. The way Harlan Voss himself tipped his hat whenever he saw her on the street. His smile cold and patient. "Fine," she said. "You can ride with me. But you stay back. You do not speak. You do not draw attention." Jesse nodded. Agreed. An hour later, they rode into Sunset Fork side by side. Althea on her roan mare, and Jesse on a borrowed gelding from her string. The town was small, dusty, and practical. A single main street lined with clapboard buildings. The bank on one corner, the saloon on the other, the general store in between. Althea pulled up in front of the store and dismounted. Jesse stayed in the saddle, eyes scanning the street. A few townspeople glanced their way, curious. Althea ignored them and walked inside. The store smelled like coffee, leather, and soap. Mrs. Calloway, the shopkeeper's wife, looked up from the counter and smiled. "Morning, Althea. What can I get you?" "Flour, sugar, and lamp oil," Althea said. "And whatever news you have." Mrs. Calloway's smile faltered. "Well, there is talk. Harlan Voss has been asking around about your ranch again. Said he heard you might be looking to sell." Althea's stomach clenched. "I am not." Mrs. Calloway lowered her voice. "He also said you might not have a choice. Something about the county reassessing land claims. Making sure all the paperwork is in order." The room tilted. Althea gripped the edge of the counter. "When?" "Soon. Maybe next month." He did not say exactly. Althea forced herself to breathe. "Thank you." She paid for the supplies, loaded them into her saddlebag, and walked back outside. Jesse was still mounted, but his posture had shifted. He was watching something down the street. Althea followed his gaze. Harlan Voss stood in front of the bank, talking to 2 men in long coats. One of them was tall, broad, with a scar across his cheek. The other was lean and mean-looking, with a rifle slung over his shoulder. Both wore guns low on their hips. Voss looked up saw Althea, and smiled. He tipped his hat. The two men turned to look. Althea mounted quickly. "We are leaving." Jesse did not argue. They rode out of town at a steady trot. Not too fast, not too slow. But Althea could feel eyes on her back the whole way. When they were clear of the town limits, Jesse spoke. Those were the men from last night. Althea's hands tightened on the reins. "Are you sure?" "Positive. The one with the scar shot the engineer. The other one tried to put a bullet in me when I chased them into the canyon." Althea's pulse hammered. "Then, Boss knows you are alive. He knows. And now he knows you and I were seen together." Althea swore under her breath. This was exactly what she had feared. Voss would not let it go. He would dig. He would push. And sooner or later, he would find the crack in her story. The forged signature. The falsified claim. The lie she had built her life on. "We need a plan," Jesse said. Althea shook her head. "There is no plan. You testify against Voss, he kills you. I fight him in court, he buries me. We are both finished." Jesse pulled his horse alongside hers. "Not if we marry." Althea jerked the reins so hard her mare tossed her head. "What?" Jesse kept his voice calm. "If we marry, your ranch becomes joint property. Voss cannot foreclose without going through both of us. And if we present a united front, it makes it harder for him to isolate either one of us." "That is insane." "It is practical." Althea stared at him. "You are a stranger. I do not know you. I do not trust you. You do not have to trust me. You just have to trust that I want Voss dead as much as you want to keep your ranch." Althea pulled her horse to a stop. Jesse reined in beside her. The prairie stretched out around them, wide and empty. The sky was pale blue, washed clean by the storm. Everything looked peaceful. But underneath, the ground was shifting. "Why would you do this?" she asked quietly. "Because I have spent 10 years watching men like Voss take what they want and walk away clean. I am tired of it. And because you are the first person I have met in this valley who is willing to fight back." Althea looked at him, really looked at him. The stubble on his jaw, the scar, the weariness in his eyes. He was telling the truth. She could see it. But truth did not mean safety. And marriage did not mean trust. "If I say yes," she said slowly, "this is business. Nothing more. You help me keep the ranch. I give you a place to stay while you build your case. When Voss is gone, we go our separate ways." Jesse nodded. "Fair enough. And you do not ask about my claim. You do not ask about my husband. You do not ask about anything that happened before you showed up." Jesse's gaze sharpened, but he did not push. "Agreed." Althea took a breath. "Then, we do this fast. Before anyone has time to ask questions." Jesse extended his hand. "Deal." She hesitated, then shook it. His grip was firm, warm, steady. She pulled away quickly. They rode back to the ranch in silence. Althea's mind was spinning. She was about to marry a man she barely knew, for reasons that would sound insane to anyone who heard them. But the alternative was losing everything. And she had not fought this hard, lied this much, buried this many secrets, just to give up now. They were married 3 days later, in the small chapel at the edge of town. The preacher was old, half blind, and asked no questions. Althea wore her cream blouse and a clean skirt. Jesse wore his jacket and hat, freshly brushed. There were no flowers, no witnesses, no music. The preacher read the vows. Althea repeated them in a voice that did not shake. Jesse did the same. When it was done, the preacher closed his Bible and nodded. "You may kiss the bride." Althea and Jesse looked at each other. Neither moved. The silence stretched. The preacher coughed. "It is customary." Jesse leaned in slowly, gave Althea a brief, careful kiss on the cheek, and stepped back. Althea's face burned, but she kept her expression steady. They signed the register, paid the preacher, walked out into the fading daylight. "Congratulations," Jesse said dryly. Althea almost laughed. It came out as a sharp exhale. "This is the strangest thing I have ever done." "Same." They rode back to the ranch. Althea's hands were shaking by the time they reached the house. She dismounted, tied the mare, and walked inside without looking back. Jesse followed a moment later. The house was small. 2 rooms, a kitchen with a wood stove and a table, a bedroom with a narrow bed and a trunk. Althea stood in the middle of the kitchen, arms crossed, trying to figure out what happened next. Jesse closed the door. "I will sleep in the barn." Althea turned. "You do not have to." "Yes, I do. This is a business arrangement. I will not make it more complicated than it needs to be." Relief and something else, something she did not want to name, flooded through her. "Fine." Jesse set his hat on the table. "But we need to make this look real. Starting tomorrow, we tell people we have been courting quietly for months. We married fast because of the land reassessment. It is not romantic, but it is plausible." Althea nodded. "What about Voss?" "He will hear about it, probably by tomorrow night. And he will be angry." "Good," Althea said. "Let him be angry." Jesse's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "You are tougher than you look." "I have had to be." She turned away, started pulling bread and cheese from the cupboard. Jesse washed his hands at the basin and sat down at the table. They ate in silence, the lamplight flickering between them. When the meal was finished, Jesse stood. "I will check the barn. Make sure everything is locked down." Althea nodded. She watched him walk out, then sat alone in the quiet house, staring at the wedding band on her finger. It was plain silver, bought from the general store that morning. It felt strange, heavy, real. She had not worn a ring since her husband died. She had buried him in his. The thought made her chest tighten. She pushed it away, stood, and started washing the dishes. Her hands were steady. Her mind was clear. She had made her choice. Now she just had to live with it. The next morning, word spread. By noon, half the town knew Althea Boone had married a railroad guard named Jesse Cooper. By evening, Harlan Voss knew too. He showed up at the ranch just before sunset, riding a black stallion with silver tack. 2 men flanked him, the same 2 from town. Althea saw them coming from the porch and called for Jesse. He stepped out of the barn, rifle in hand, and walked to stand beside her. They waited. Voss reined in at the fence line and dismounted. He was tall, silver-haired, impeccably dressed. His smile was cold and smooth. "Mrs. Cooper. Or should I say, Mrs. Cooper now." Congratulations. Althea did not smile back. What do you want, Mr. Voss? Just wanted to welcome your new husband to the valley. Make sure he understands how things work around here. Jessie stepped forward. I understand fine. Voss's smile whitened. Do you? Because I have been hearing stories. Stories about a railroad guard who got himself mixed up in some trouble up north. Stories about missing payroll and dead outlaws. Stories about a man who should have stayed in Cheyenne. Jessie did not flinch. Sounds like gossip. Voss tilted his head. Maybe. Or maybe it is the truth. Either way, I thought I should offer some advice. This valley does not take kindly to outsiders who stir up trouble. Men who cause problems tend to disappear. And their wives, well, they tend to lose things. Property, livestock, sometimes more. Althea's blood went cold, but she kept her voice level. Is that a threat? Voss spread his hands. Just a friendly warning. You are a smart woman, Althea. You have always known when to be practical. I hope marriage has not changed that. Jessie raised the rifle slightly. I think you have said enough. The two men behind Voss shifted, hands drifting toward their guns. The air thickened. Althea felt her heart pounding, but she did not move. Voss studied Jessie for a long moment, then laughed softly. You have spirit. I will give you that. But spirit does not stop bullets. Remember that. He mounted his horse, tipped his hat to Althea, and rode off. His men followed. The dust settled slowly. Althea let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. That was a threat. Jessie lowered the rifle. Yes, it was. So what do? We get ready. Because he is not going to wait much longer. That night, Jessie set up watch points around the ranch. He showed Althea how to load the spare rifle, how to bar the doors, how to signal if she saw riders coming. They worked side by side, barely speaking, but the silence felt different now. Less wary, more coordinated. When the moon rose, Jessie took first watch from the barn loft. Althea tried to sleep, but every creak of the house made her eyes snap open. Finally, she gave up, wrapped her shawl around her shoulders, and walked out to the barn. Jessie was sitting near the loft door, rifle across his knees, eyes on the dark prairie. He glanced down when he heard her footsteps. You should be resting. So should you. He almost smiled. Not how this works. Althea climbed the ladder and sat down a few feet away. The night air was cool, stars scattered across the sky. The prairie was a black ocean, rippling under the wind. Do you think he will come tonight? She asked. No. He will wait. Make us nervous. Let the town talk. Then he will move. Althea pulled her shawl tighter. How long? A week. Maybe less. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Why did you really take this job? With the railroad. Jessie did not answer right away. When he did, his voice was low. Because I needed work that kept me moving. I have spent 10 years trying not to stay in one place long enough to care about it. Why? Because caring gets you hurt. You lose people. You lose homes. You lose pieces of yourself. It is easier to just keep moving. Althea understood that. She had felt it too after her husband died. The urge to run, to sell the ranch and disappear. But she had stayed, because running felt like giving up, and she had already given up too much. "What changed?" she asked. Jessie looked at her. "You did." The words hung in the air between them. Althea's breath caught. She did not know what to say. She did not know if he meant it the way it sounded. Before she could ask, Jessie stood. "You should get some sleep. I will wake you if anything happens." Althea nodded and climbed back down the ladder. But as she walked back to the house, she felt the weight of his gaze on her back. And something in her chest shifted. The next few days passed in tense routine. Althea worked the ranch. Jessie patrolled the fence line. They ate meals together, spoke little, moved around each other with careful precision. The town buzzed with gossip. Some people congratulated Althea. Others whispered. Mrs. Calloway brought a pie and a worried smile. The blacksmith asked Jessie if he needed extra ammunition. Word was spreading. Voss was asking questions. The county clerk had been seen going through old land records. The sheriff had ridden out to the ranch twice, claiming he was checking on complaints about stray cattle. But his eyes lingered too long on Jessie. On the 6th night, Althea woke to the sound of breaking glass. She grabbed the rifle and ran to the window. 3 men on horseback circled the barn, torches in hand. One of them hurled a bottle. It shattered against the barn wall, and flames bloomed. Jessie. Althea bolted out of the house, still in her nightdress, rifle raised. Jessie was already running from the barn, shirt half-buttoned, gun drawn. He fired twice. One of the riders yelped and fell. The other 2 wheeled their horses and charged. Althea aimed and pulled the trigger. The rifle kicked hard. One horse reared. The rider cursed and fired back. The bullet splintered the porch railing. Althea ducked, reloaded, fired again. Jessie shot the second rider clean out of the saddle. The third man spurred his horse and fled into the darkness. Jessie ran to the barn, grabbed a bucket, and started dousing the flames. Althea joined him, heart racing, hands shaking, adrenaline roaring through her veins. They worked in frantic silence until the fire was out. Smoke curled into the night. The barn wall was scorched but intact. 2 bodies lay in the dirt. Jessie checked them quickly, then straightened. They are Voss's men. Althea lowered the rifle, breathing hard. He is done waiting. Jessie nodded grimly. We need to move. Tonight. Where? Town. The only safe place left is in public. If we stay here, he will send more men. And next time, we might not be fast enough. Althea looked at the ranch, the house, the barn. Everything she had fought to keep. Leaving felt like surrender. But staying felt like death. All right, she said. We go. They packed fast. Clothes, documents, the marriage certificate, the forged land claim hidden in the bottom of Althea's trunk. She hesitated over that last one, then shoved it into her saddlebag. If Voss was digging into records, she needed to be ready. They rode into town under a cold moon. Horses lathered, both of them armed. The streets were empty. Jessie led them to the boarding house, knocked hard and woke the owner. They paid for a room, locked the door, and sat in the darkness, listening. Althea's hands would not stop shaking. Jessie poured her a glass of water from the pitcher on the nightstand. Drink. She drank. The water was metallic and warm, but it steadied her. She set the glass down and looked at him. What happens now? Now we force Voss's hand. Tomorrow, we go to the sheriff. We tell him everything. We make it public. He will not listen. He works for Voss. Then we go over his head. We send a telegram to the territorial marshal. We get witnesses. We make enough noise that Voss cannot silence us without making himself look guilty. Althea shook her head. That could take weeks. Then we buy weeks. How? Jessie met her eyes. We go to the town social tomorrow night. We dance. We smile. We show everyone that we are not afraid. Voss thrives on fear. If we take that away, we take his power. Althea almost laughed. You want to dance. I want to survive. And sometimes, surviving means looking like you have already won. She stared at him. He was serious. Completely serious. And the worst part was, it made sense. Voss was counting on them to run, to hide, to make mistakes. If they showed up at the social, arm in arm, acting like newlyweds without a care in the world, it would rattle him. It would force him to act openly, in front of witnesses. Or, it would get them both killed. Fine, Althea said. We dance. The town social was held in the meeting hall, a drafty wooden building with lanterns strung across the rafters and a fiddler in the corner. Althea had not been to one since before her husband died. She had forgotten how loud they were, how crowded, how everyone watched everyone else. She walked in on Jessie's arm, wearing her best blouse and a borrowed ribbon in her hair. Jessie had shaved, combed his hair, and left his hat behind. He looked different, younger, less guarded. But his eyes still scanned the room like a man expecting trouble. People stared, whispered. A few smiled. Mrs. Calloway waved from across the room. The blacksmith nodded. Harlan Voss stood near the punch table, watching them with a smile that did not reach his eyes. Althea's stomach knotted, but she kept walking. Jessie guided her to the edge of the dance floor, where couples were already spinning to a reel. He turned to face her, extended his hand. Ready? He asked. No. He smiled. Neither am I. The music swelled. Jessie pulled her into the dance. Althea stumbled at first, out of practice, out of rhythm, but Jessie held her steady. His hand was warm at her waist. His grip was firm, but careful. He led without forcing, adjusted when she faltered, and after a few bars, she found the beat. They turned, spun, stepped. The room blurred around them. Althea focused on Jessie's face, the way his eyes stayed on hers, the way he moved with surprising grace for a man who carried a gun like it was part of his body. You are a better dancer than I expected, she said. My mother made me learn. Said it was the only polite skill I would ever need. Althea almost smiled. Did it work? Once. Long time ago. The music shifted to a slower tune. Jessie pulled her closer. Althea's breath hitched. She could feel the warmth of him, the solidity, the way he moved like he was trying to shield her from every eye in the room. This is strange, she said quietly. What is? This. Dancing with you. Pretending we are something we are not. Jessie's gaze darkened. Who says we are pretending? Althea's heart skipped. She did not know how to answer that. She did not know if she wanted to. Before she could speak, the music stopped. Applause rippled through the room. Jesse released her slowly, stepped back, and offered his arm again. They walked to the punch table. Voss was still there, watching. "Lovely performance," Voss said smoothly. "You two almost look like a real couple." Althea lifted her chin. "We are a real couple." Voss's smile sharpened. "Of course. I just meant it must be difficult. Marrying a stranger, trusting someone you barely know, wondering if they are hiding something." Jesse stepped forward. "If you have something to say, say it." Voss sipped his punch. "Just making conversation. But since you mention it, I have been doing some digging into your lovely wife's land claim. And I found something interesting." Althea's blood turned to ice. Jesse's hand moved toward his gun. Voss chuckled. "Relax. I am not going to make a scene. Not here. Not yet. But I will say this. If that claim is not everything it should be, well, that would be a shame. For both of you." He set down his cup, tipped his hat, and walked away. Althea felt the floor tilt. Jesse caught her elbow. "We need to leave. Now." They walked out into the cool night air. Althea's hands were shaking again. Jesse led her down the street, away from the lights, into the shadows. "He knows," Althea whispered. "Maybe. Maybe he is bluffing. He is not. I can tell." Jesse stopped, turned to face her. "What did you do, Althea?" She closed her eyes. "My husband died the night before the land claim deadline. He had not signed the papers. If I did not file, I would lose everything. So I signed his name. I forged it. And I filed the claim the next morning." Jesse was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Does anyone else know?" "No." The clerk barely looked at it. "I thought it was buried. I thought I was safe." Jesse exhaled slowly. "All right. We can fix this. How? I do not know yet. But we will figure it out." Althea looked at him. This man she had married out of desperation. This stranger who had walked into her storm shelter with a gun and a vendetta, and somehow become the only person she trusted. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. "Really?" Jesse reached out, tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Because I know what it is like to do the wrong thing for the right reason. And because I am tired of watching good people lose to men like Voss." Althea's throat tightened. She wanted to say something, but the words would not come. Instead, she stepped forward and kissed him. It was quick, impulsive. Nothing like the careful peck at the chapel. Jesse went still, then kissed her back, slow and deliberate, one hand sliding to the back of her neck. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. Althea's face burned. "I should not have done that." Jesse's voice was rough. "I am not complaining." They stood there, inches apart, the night humming around them. Then Jesse took her hand. "Come on. We need to get back to the boarding house before Voss sends more men." They walked quickly, staying to the alleys. But as they turned the corner, a gunshot cracked through the air. Jesse shoved Althea against the wall, drew his gun, and fired back. Two men emerged from the shadows, rifles raised. Jesse shot one. The other ducked behind a rain barrel and returned fire. The bullet clipped Jesse's shoulder. He grunted, staggered, but did not drop. Althea grabbed the rifle from her saddle and fired. The second man fell. Jesse leaned against the wall, breathing hard, blood soaking his sleeve. Althea dropped the rifle and grabbed his arm. "You are hit." "It is fine." "It is not fine." She dragged him into the boarding house, up the stairs, into their room. She locked the door, lit the lamp, and tore his jacket off. The wound was deep, but clean, just below the shoulder. She pressed a towel against it, hands shaking. "Hold still." "I am holding still." "No, you are not." Jesse gritted his teeth. "You are bossy when you are scared." "I am not scared." "Yes, you are." Althea met his eyes. "Fine. I am terrified." "Happy." Jesse's expression softened. "No. But I am grateful." She bandaged the wound as best she could, wrapping it tight. Jesse did not flinch, but his jaw was clenched, his face pale. When she finished, he caught her wrist. "Thank you." Althea nodded. She wanted to say more, but exhaustion was crashing over her like a wave. She sank onto the edge of the bed. Jesse sat beside her. "We cannot keep running," she said quietly. "I know. So what do we do?" Jesse was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "We end it. Tomorrow. We go to the bank. We confront Voss in front of witnesses. We force him to either back down or show his hand. Either way, it ends." Althea looked at him. "That is suicide." "Maybe. Or maybe it is the only way we survive." She wanted to argue. She wanted to run. But deep down, she knew he was right. Voss would not stop. He would keep coming until one of them broke. The only way out was through. "All right," she said. "Tomorrow." They lay down side by side on the narrow bed, fully clothed, exhausted, bleeding, and bound together by something that felt bigger than a business arrangement. Althea stared at the ceiling, listening to Jesse breathe, and wondered if she would live to see another sunrise. The bank opened at 9. Althea and Jesse walked in at 5 past, armed, bandaged, and ready. Harlan Voss sat behind his mahogany desk in the back office, reading a ledger. He looked up when they entered, smiled, and set the ledger aside. "Mr. and Mrs. Cooper. To what do I owe the pleasure?" Jesse closed the door behind them. "We are here to settle this." Voss leaned back in his chair. "Settle what?" "The foreclosure. The land claim. The men you sent to kill us. All of it." Voss's smile did not waver. "I have no idea what you are talking about." Althea stepped forward. "Yes, you do. You have been trying to take my ranch for 2 years. You hired men to rob the railroad payroll and kill witnesses. You sent riders to burn my barn. And now you are threatening to challenge my land claim because you think I will break." Voss studied her. "And will you?" "No." His smile faded. "That is unfortunate, because I have already filed a petition with the county to review your claim. And when they do, they will find exactly what I found. A forged signature. A fraudulent filing. Grounds for seizure." Althea's heart hammered, but she kept her voice steady. "Then you will have to prove it." Voss opened a drawer, pulled out a document, and set it on the desk. This is a copy of your original filing. I had a handwriting expert compare the signature to your late husband's known writing. It does not match. Althea felt the ground drop out from under her. Jesse stepped forward, hand on his gun. That proves nothing. Handwriting changes. Circumstances vary. Voss shrugged. Maybe. But it will be enough to tie this up in court for years. And in the meantime, the ranch will be held in trust. Under my management, of course. Over my dead body, Althea said. Voss's eyes glittered. That can be arranged. Jesse drew his gun. So can this. The office went silent. Voss did not move. Neither did Althea. The clock on the wall ticked. Then the door opened. The sheriff walked in, hand on his holster. Problem here, Mr. Voss. Voss smiled. No problem, Sheriff. Just a conversation. Looks like more than that. Jesse kept his gun trained on Voss. This man hired outlaws to rob a railroad payroll and kill a witness. He has been threatening my wife and burning her property. And now he is trying to steal her ranch with a fraudulent claim challenge. The sheriff's expression did not change. That is a serious accusation. It is the truth, Althea said. And I can prove it. Voss laughed. With what? Forged documents. Hearsay. The word of a drifter and a desperate widow. Althea reached into her saddlebag, pulled out a folded paper, and set it on the desk. This is a letter from the outlaw Jesse captured before he died. It names you as the man who hired him. Jesse sent a copy to the territorial marshal 2 days ago. Voss's smile vanished. That is a lie. Jesse pulled a second paper from his coat. And this is a telegram from the marshal. He is sending a federal investigator. Should be here by tomorrow. The room went very still. Voss stared at the papers, then at Jesse, then at Althea. His face darkened. You are bluffing. Try me, Jesse said. The sheriff cleared his throat. Mr. Voss, if there is an investigation coming, I need to know. Voss stood slowly. There is no investigation. These two are fabricating evidence to cover their own crimes. Then you will not mind if I hold on to these papers, the sheriff said. Just until the marshal arrives. Voss's jaw clenched. He looked at Althea, at Jesse, at the sheriff. Then he smiled again, cold and sharp. Fine. Hold them. But when this falls apart, I will own every inch of land you ever touched. He walked out. The sheriff followed. Althea and Jesse stood alone in the office, breathing hard. Did we just win? Althea asked. Jesse holstered his gun. We bought time. That is not the same thing. Althea sank into a chair. What if the marshal does not come? What if Voss is right, and the letter is not enough? Jesse knelt in front of her, took her hands. Then, we keep fighting. We do not stop. We do not give up. We hold the line until there is nothing left to hold. Althea looked into his eyes. This man who had become her husband, her partner, her anchor in the storm. And for the first time, she believed him. They left the bank and walked into the street. The town was waking up. Shopkeepers swept porches. Children ran past. A wagon rattled by. Everything looked normal. But Althea could feel the shift. Word would spread. People would talk. Voss would not let this stand. That night, they stayed at the boarding house again, doors locked, rifles loaded. Jesse's shoulder was stiff and sore, but he refused to rest. He sat by the window, watching the street, waiting. Althea tried to sleep, but could not. Finally, she got up and sat beside him. You should rest. So should you. I cannot. Jesse glanced at her. Scared. Althea nodded. Terrified. Me too. She almost smiled. You do not look terrified. I have had practice hiding it. They sat in silence for a while. Then Althea said, if this does not work, if Voss wins, what will you do? Jesse was quiet. Then he said, I will make sure you are safe, even if it costs me everything. Althea's throat tightened. You do not owe me that. Yes, I do. You trusted me when you had no reason to. You let me into your life. You married me. That means something. It was supposed to be business. Jesse turned to look at her. Was it? Althea met his gaze. The lamplight flickered between them. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. She thought about the storm shelter, the barn, the dance, the kiss, the way he had stood beside her, fought beside her, bled beside her. No, she said quietly. It was not. Jesse reached out, cupped her face in his hand. Good. Because I stopped pretending the night you kissed me. Althea leaned into his touch, closed her eyes, and let herself feel it. The warmth, the safety, the terrifying, exhilarating truth that she had fallen in love with him. When she opened her eyes, Jesse was watching her with an expression she had never seen before. Soft, open, vulnerable. I love you, he said. The words hung in the air. Althea's heart cracked open. She kissed him, fierce and desperate, pouring everything she could not say into that single moment. Jesse pulled her close, careful of his wounded shoulder, and kissed her back like she was the only solid thing left in the world. When they broke apart, both were shaking. Althea pressed her forehead to his. I love you too. They held each other in the lamplight. Two people who had started as strangers and become something neither of them had planned for. Something worth fighting for. The marshal arrived 2 days later, a stern man with a badge and a reputation for cleaning up corrupt towns. He interviewed Jesse, read the outlaw's letter, examined the bank records, and questioned half the town. Voss tried to block him at every turn, but the marshal was relentless. On the 4th day, he arrested Harlan Voss for conspiracy, robbery, attempted murder, and fraud. The charges were long. The evidence was damning. Voss was led out of his own bank in handcuffs, furious and shouting threats, while the town watched in stunned silence. The sheriff resigned the next day. The county clerk was fired. The judge recused himself from anything involving Voss's holdings. And Althea's land claim, forged signature and all, was quietly validated under a provision for widows filing under duress. It was over. Althea and Jesse rode back to the ranch on a clear, cold morning. The barn still bore scorch marks, but the fence was mended, the stock was healthy, and the land was theirs. Truly theirs. They stood on the porch, looking out at the prairie. Jesse's shoulder was healing. Althea's hands were steady. The weight that had pressed on both of them for weeks was gone, leaving behind something lighter, something that felt like hope. "I never thought we would make it," Althea said. "Neither did I, but we did." Jesse turned to her, took her hand. "We did. Together." Althea smiled. "So what happens now?" "Now we rebuild. We fix the barn. We work the ranch. We live as husband and wife." Jesse's mouth curved. "As husband and wife." Althea leaned against him, rested her head on his shoulder. For the first time in 2 years, she felt safe. Not because the danger was gone, but because she was not facing it alone. They stayed there until the sun climbed higher, painting the prairie in gold and green. Then they went inside, closed the door, and started the work of building a life together. Weeks turned into months. The ranch flourished. Jesse hired hands, mended fences, and proved to be as good with cattle as he was with a gun. Althea kept the books, managed the stock, and surprised herself by laughing more often than she cried. The town forgave them, slowly. Some people still whispered, some still doubted. But Mrs. Calloway brought casseroles. The blacksmith offered discounts. And when Althea walked into church on Sunday morning with Jesse beside her, people nodded and made room. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Jesse said, "I have been thinking." "About what?" "About staying. Not just for a year or two, but for good." Althea looked at him. "You want to stay? I want to build something that lasts. With you." Althea felt warmth spread through her chest. "I want that too." Jesse smiled, pulled her close, and kissed her temple. "Then it is settled." They sat together as the sky turned purple and the stars came out. Two people who had found each other in a storm and chosen to stay when the skies cleared. The prairie stretched out around them, wide and wild and full of promise. And for the first time in a long time, Althea believed in second chances. Spring arrived with wildflowers and rain. The ranch came alive. Calves were born. Crops sprouted. The barn roof was repaired. Jesse built a new fence along the north pasture. Althea planted a vegetable garden and found herself humming while she worked. They fell into rhythms. Jesse woke early, checked the stock, mended what needed mending. Althea cooked, kept the house, managed the finances. In the evenings, they sat together on the porch, talking about the day, planning for tomorrow, simply being. One night, Jesse asked, "Do you ever regret it? Marrying me?" Althea looked at him, surprised. "No." "Why?" "Because it was not what you planned. You were forced into it." Althea thought for a moment. Then she said, "I was forced into the decision. But I was not forced into loving you. That was my choice." Jesse's expression softened. Mine too. They kissed, slow and sweet, and Althea felt the last of her old fears dissolve. She had spent so long hiding, running, protecting herself from pain. But Jesse had taught her something better. That trust was worth the risk. That love was stronger than fear. That second chances were real. Summer brought heat and hard work. They hired 2 ranch hands, young men who worked steady and asked few questions. The herd grew. The garden flourished. Jessie taught Althea to shoot better. Althea taught Jessie to cook something other than beans and hardtack. The town accepted them fully now. Jessie was invited to join the town council. Althea was asked to help organize the harvest festival. They became part of the fabric of Sunset Fork. No longer outsiders, no longer strangers. One afternoon, as they rode the fence line together, Althea said, "I never thought I would be happy again. After my husband died, I thought that part of my life was over." Jessie glanced at her. "And now I know I was wrong. Happiness is not something you lose once and never find again. It is something you build every day with the right person." Jessie smiled. "I am the right person." Althea laughed. "Yes, you are." They rode on, side by side, the sun warm on their faces, the prairie alive around them. That fall, they renewed their vows in the same chapel where they had first married. But this time, it was different. The pews were full. Mrs. Calloway cried. The blacksmith stood as witness. The preacher's smile. Althea wore wildflowers in her hair. Jessie wore a clean white shirt. When the preacher asked if they took each other, they both said yes without hesitation, without doubt, without fear. And when the preacher said, "You may kiss your bride," Jessie pulled Althea close and kissed her like he meant it. Like he had been waiting his whole life for this moment. The congregation applauded. Someone whooped. Althea laughed against Jessie's mouth, and he grinned. And for a heartbeat, the whole world felt perfect. Winter came quietly. The first snow fell on a Tuesday morning, dusting the prairie in white. Althea stood at the window, watching it fall, one hand resting on her belly. Jessie came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, and rested his chin on her shoulder. "How are you feeling?" "Nervous. Excited. Terrified." He smiled. "Sounds about right." Althea turned to face him. "What if I am not ready?" "You are ready. And I will be right here." She leaned into him, closed her eyes, and believed it. Because Jessie had never lied to her. He had never abandoned her. He had stood beside her through fire, blood, and fear, and he was still standing. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too." They stood there together, watching the snow fall, waiting for the future to arrive. The baby came in early spring, just as the wildflowers started to bloom. The labor was long and hard, but Althea was tougher. Jessie stayed by her side the whole time, holding her hand, whispering encouragement, refusing to leave even when the midwife suggested he wait outside. When the baby finally arrived, a tiny, squalling, perfect little girl, Jessie wept. Althea had never seen him cry before. It broke something open in her chest. "She is beautiful," Jessie said, voice rough. Althea smiled, exhausted and exhilarated. "She looks like you. Poor kid." Althea laughed, then winced. "Do not make me laugh." Jessie kissed her forehead, then the baby's. "Thank you." "For what?" "For this. For everything." Althea closed her eyes, the baby warm and solid in her arms, Jessie's hand on her shoulder. She thought about the storm shelter, the forged claim, the gunfight, the fear, the lies, the desperate gamble that had brought them together, and she was grateful for all of it, because it had led her here. Years passed. The baby grew into a toddler, then a little girl with dark hair and her father's eyes. The ranch prospered. Jesse's shoulder healed, though it ached in winter. Althea's hair showed streaks of silver. They added a room to the house, built a bigger barn, bought more land. The town grew too. New families arrived. New businesses opened. The railroad expanded. Sunset Fork became the kind of place people wanted to stay. And through it all, Althea and Jesse built a life. Not a perfect life. There were hard winters, sick cattle, dry summers, and nights when money was tight. But there was also laughter, warmth, trust, and love that deepened with every passing year. One evening, years after that first storm, Althea and Jesse stood on the porch watching the sunset. Their daughter played in the yard, chasing fireflies. The prairie stretched out golden and endless. "Do you ever think about that night?" Althea asked. "In the storm shelter." Jesse smiled. "Every day. Do you regret any of it?" "Not 1 second." Althea leaned against him. "Neither do I." Jesse wrapped his arm around her, pulled her close, and kissed the top of her head. "We did all right. We did better than all right." He chuckled. "Yeah, we did." They stood there together, watching the sky turn purple, the stars beginning to appear. Their daughter ran up, breathless and laughing, and Jesse scooped her up. She shrieked with delight. Althea watched them, her heart full, and thought about second chances. About trust. About love that grew in the hardest soil and bloomed anyway. She had started as a widow, with a secret, a forged claim, and a desperate hope. She had married a stranger out of fear. And somehow, impossibly, she had found everything she never knew she needed. That night, after their daughter was asleep, Althea and Jesse sat on the porch under the stars. The prairie was quiet. The moon was bright. The air smelled like sage and grass. "Thank you," Althea said. "For what?" "For walking into my storm shelter. For staying. For fighting. For loving me even when I did not make it easy." Jesse turned to her, took her hand. "You made it worth it. Every single day." Althea smiled, tears pricking her eyes. "I love you, Jesse Cooper." "I love you, Althea Cooper." They sat together, hand in hand, under the wide western sky. Two people who had been strangers, then partners, then lovers, then family. Two people who had gambled everything on a desperate hope, and won. The storm that brought them together was long past, but the life they built in its wake was still unfolding, still growing, still full of promise. And that, Althea thought, was more